Yes, welcome. This is A RAP CRITIC. I'm your boy Malik 16. And no, I didn't get cold between the last episode and this one. I just wanted to flex a little bit more, let y'all know we still keeping that Libra gang spirit alive. And this is part 2 of the classic review of the 1996 album Illadelph Half-life by none other than The Roots, an album that has turned 25 this year as a part of our 1996 all-year campaign. So, with no further ado, I want to jump right into it. This is category 2, where we go over the rap performance on the album. I'd like to thank those of you who sat through that 44-minute long video. It's the longest video we've ever done on this channel. I really don't foresee there being lots of those, but it was my birthday. So shout out to you. If you have not, please take this moment in time to like and subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you're up on things. And let's go to dimension 1. First dimension we talk about in category 2 is the personality and charisma. How much personality and charisma was exhibited by The Roots on this album? The frontmen of this group at the time were Malik B and Black Thought, the M Militant and the Bad Lieutenant, respectively. And pay attention now, I just said that because that's going to come up. So, The Roots were coming in full force. We talked in video 1 about there being this angle of making sure that there was no mistake that they were a rap group, a hip-hop group, not an alternative hip-hop group, not an experimental hip-hop group, not a band doing rap, but a rap act, period. Even to another extent, to take it even further, an underground hip-hop act. Now, whether or not The Roots were aiming for underground status, that something we covered in video 1, so go back, take a minute to look at that if you have not. But with that, coming in as a collective, as a group, means that, the room for solo presentation wasn't as emphasized on this album. The room for one personality to outshine all others wasn't the focal point here. Some may argue that because Black Thought appeared on more songs, his presence was felt a little stronger. But as I mentioned, at this point in time, Malik B and Black Thought were on even tiers. The Roots were still relatively unknown by the industry and commercially before you're put in this position of having to familiarize yourself with one or the other or put a face to the group. So what happens on Wax is Malik B has more of the aggressive approach, while Black Thought is more of the observer. And they're active in both. They're active with the observer positions, so they're not, somewhere in the woods. They're active on the streets of Philadelphia from an observation standpoint. It's just that Malik B takes it up a notch and has more aggressive lines about what he will do, or more taunting lines, and more street-oriented lines. And so, what you get here is a focus on the lyrics and a focus on Philadelphia, not so much a focus on the individuals and their, life stories. You get a lot of their views on things. So I'm gonna observe the landscape, and I'm also gonna tell you where I fit in that landscape. So you do get that. I think, Malik B coming from a more street perspective, he says things like, I even speak to geeks, I hope my fortune is sweet. I'm discreet in the streets, but that's just the way I play though. I lay low, but over your head just like a halo. Hell's Angel. And I think that perfectly sums up his observer but aggressive standpoint. Meaning, look, I'm from the streets, but I make sure in my travels I'm more well-rounded and I got more going on than you think because I just play the cut. And we found out that that's true. We found out along the years that Malik B preferred to be in the studio and just continue to make music, but not necessarily be on the stages and be in the videos, and eventually faded to the background until he passed away. Rest in peace. With Black Thought, you know, he'll tell you what he's not and where he's at. So, you know, when he's saying, you know, at the last spots I got credit, could run them down in alphabetical order, it's sort of pathetic. Like, he's telling you he's among the streets, but he also is giving you the 411, or I'm sorry, the 311 on what's going on in those streets. And then they also talk about the world, you know, referencing things going on in politics, in war, in just things, you know. It's beyond just their neighborhood. You know, sometimes they speak about Philadelphia as a whole, sometimes they speak about the nation, sometimes they speak about the industry, and again, they make a lot of global references. So from that, you get this idea that these are serious guys. You know, I pointed that out. There's not a lot of room for humor here. You know, even when Malik B slips a line in there, in his punchlines, you get tints of humor, but humor is never really a tool that's used fully here. So you might get things like, don't like chicks with weaves, talking about I need conditioner, right? That's as far as it goes on any comedic angle. In a nutshell, there's a seriousness, there's an active observer lens, and there's hints of aggression coming from Malik B. I do think Malik B, because there's more street and more aggression going there, there's a little bit more of a pull you in effect, whereas Black Thought, his control of words is where his charisma lies. Something to consider on a scale from 1 to 5. Heartbeats takes us to dimension 2. Suspension of disbelief versus believability, or suspension of disbelief or believability. This is not an album where suspension of disbelief is being asked of you. For the most part, these guys are telling you their role in the streets of Philadelphia. They're talking about the actual neighborhoods they're from, they're naming the neighborhoods, and interchangeably they're using their government names, they're using their real names. A lot of times in hip hop, we hear these Arabic names as names that were assumed by rappers when they made lifestyle changes, but we're talking about Philadelphia, an area that is known for its huge Black Muslim population and influence, even amongst those who are in the street life. And so it's not uncommon to walk across and meet a Basir and a Kasim and a Tariq and a Khalid. That's just Muhammad. Those are the names you're gonna find amongst the thugs in Philadelphia. So they're telling you their government names, the avenues they grew up on, their day-to-day activities. There's on the beginning of Push Up Your Lighter, Black Thought starts by saying, Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority is what I'm probably on. Then he flosses a little and says, if I'm not whipping the land throughout your section. So you get these glimpses into who they are, and because there's no suspension of disbelief, you're being asked to believe what they say on face value. Malik B mentions real life things, like when he talks about his homie getting shot, still being angry about it and wanting retaliation, and still being in investigative mode, listening to the streets and seeing what they say so he can find out. He talks about his plans on No Great Pretender, I'm on to political, universal expansion, buy out Tommy and Helly Hansen. He's just really taking you through his mind's eye. And that's what this album is really about. The narrative of these two lead rappers, lead vocalists, taking you through their mind's eye on the streets of Philadelphia, the state of the industry, and just where they want the group to go and themselves. So that's about the most individualism you get here, is when they break off and talk about their plans for themselves, but then it all kind of comes back to the Roots crew, Fifth Dynasty fold. So then of course the question is, how much do you believe both of these guys? Black Thought is really keen on talking about what he will do to competitors on the mic. He doesn't really go into this physical territory of how he'll handle enemies or anything like that. You'll hear Malik B talk about that more, you know, knuckle games and hammer cocking, nothing sweet or soft, you know, talking about active street participation if pushed. You know, you'll hear Malik B often talk about or refer to the inner struggle, the conflict that is presented by him trying to be a, you know, devout Muslim, but also this guy who is of these streets. And, you know, you'll hear him phrase things in a way like, I would do this, but I'm trying to be peaceful. Where Black Thought really keeps it on wax. Like, you know, I'll disgrace your gate, put your title in the waist, stomp out your, you know, your rep, but not you. There's no need because he's the cool observer on this album at least. And he'll let you play yourself. That's kind of the perspective that Black Thought comes from. So are any of the claims on here because of that outlandish or hard to believe? And then we factor in the guests. When Mars comes in or Dice Raw, they're a little more aggressive too. And Dice Raw especially, I think, is interesting because his first appearance on the album is on the song Episodes, where each rapper is telling these anecdotal, cautionary tales of street life. And he talks about, you know, some guy he knows who threw his brother off the roof. And, you know, I think these things are so vivid. Each rapper on that song's depictions are so vivid. It's like, oh man, you know, Black Thought talks about his cousin, Malik B talks about himself, his old, you know, stomping grounds and old activity that he had going on in the mid 80s. So, I mean, the question is always up to you how much you believe these guys. I don't think any of them are stepping very far out of the realm that the album deals with. You're not hearing guys talking about, you know, doing this super 007 sci-fi stuff, nor are you hearing them talk about doing this super gangster, super thug stuff, or even starting stuff. It's like, here's, you know, what we'll watch you do first, and here's how we'll restrain ourselves from being active while you play yourself. But also don't test us because we're serious. So something to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. Takes us to dimension 3, delivery and the use of voice. This is important. Being in a band, I feel, makes you more musically aware, right? And so it's natural, especially when you have members like Questlove, right? You can tell Lynn Hubbard, Kamal, these are people that mastered their craft and really appreciate all of the little nooks and crannies of things that make a song a song. When you're in a band, you have more appreciation for the pieces that make a final product, as opposed to just coming to a studio and the producer has the beat ready for you. So believing that Black Thought and Malik B were actively a part of the process of all of these songs from the beginning, from the first time a drum, a cymbal clash happened to the final product and final execution, then you can assume that they understood that their voices were the final instruments too. And that's how they're used. There's this continuous melodiousness to the way that Black Thought approaches. And you'll hear that it's evident, you know, I mentioned as soon as Respond React comes in, he's using his voice continuously. When that warbled key comes in, he's kind of rapping in this flowy way too. It was a huge thing because, you know, rap tends to favor those performers who have fluidity. When Nas first came out with Illmatic, one thing that people gravitated towards on songs like New York State of Mind and Memory Lane is that there's this flow, this ease of flow too. There's not this staccato breakup, there's not this this stutter step, there's just this spillage. And so Black Thought embodies spillage. You know, if he's saying focal toe-to-toe impeccable, splitting your back, son, simple as addition and subtraction. Black Thought, the infinite relaxed one. There's a melodiousness and a non-stop. Now, with the voice, it's also similar to Nas. Very easy to listen to voices. Malik B has a little bit more of a hook of gruff on his voice, but these guys are so similar in projection styles, in the way that they are, or in the ways that they are wrapping their voices around the beats, each beat. They get mellow when the beat gets mellow, they get slow when the beat is slower, they get faster and wordier if the beat is more up-tempo and complex. So, you know, these are masters of timing and making sure the syllables hit when the notes hit, and they were so evenly matched that there's enough difference to complement each other, but enough synthesis where they're in tune. And so something that I hinted at is there was almost a deliberate emphasis on certain syllable sounds. The pronunciation of certain words made Black Thought stand out. Malik B had it a little bit. I think most of his is default, just basic Philly accent. But Black Thought, you can tell this was a part of the development of his individual style, stretching out those vowel sounds in words that rhyme with style, actually. So lyrical, fatal, vital, a lot of that. Even the use of the word Illadelph instead of Philadelphia, you know, taking the phi out and using that when suited. I noticed it right away when I was younger and I listened to it. You know, I thought that was clever. It also makes more words be able to rhyme. And back then it was important, if you were proving that you were a real rapper, to use words like lyrical and verbal and, you know, those kind of words. That was huge in the mid-90s. And Black Thought and Malik B organically used those words. It didn't sound contrived. It didn't sound like, I'm keeping it real. Y'all for hip hop, y'all lyrical styles, y'all. And he was lyricist, not lyricist. I'm just a lyricist, the chemist of the hemp. So those are things to make note of, because you'll hear those kind of syllable stretches and word bends all throughout the album. So something to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. That takes us to dimension 4, the flow. Now, with this melodiousness, with this non-stop fluidity, with the perfect timing and the accents and the syllable emphasis, you get flow. And with the flow, we're talking about compound stacking and lots of internal rhymes, and you put that together and it sounds like both rappers are killing it. And they are, for all intents and purposes. The abuse of hollow rhymes was so effortless on this album that when you get sequences like Malik B on Respond React, where he's like, Malik B Bliss again, on the station with the discipline, soliciting, sometimes explicit or illicit with it in. It's like, man, where's your vocabulary coming from? And of course, Black Thought, you know, pausing when just gearing up to snap and go in this direction where he's unloading tons of those hollow rhymes too. It's just, you know, he's like the beat pit, the ill Philly resident. When he's like never benevolent but poetically prevalent, cooler than peppermint. He spills. His flow goes over and then down and then back over, because he lets that many syllables come out in hills. He rhymes in hills. So running words together never sounds rushed because it's controlled over these hills. So where he goes on Unite Verse and War, rhyming I weigh your mind away like Alzheimer's. I pull the mic up out my bomber, big up to Bahama. Dia, ayo, this shit, I'm leaving them in trauma. And after me, he also does that thing where it is this cliffhanger, this catch after thing. Like, so when he ends and he goes, Bahama, Dia, ayo, this shit, I'm leaving them in trauma. He manages to rhyme the Dia with the leaving, the E sound and leaving, and the trauma with all the other parts, all the other ending words in that rhyme scheme. And that is total syllable control. And that is what has made Black Thought a legend and spoke about even to this day in rap circles, and now that they have popularity from being more mainstream and being more visible, people talk about Black Thought being in the top 5, top 10 now. This has always been the style that he was leading with from this album forward, and even before then, but he had really honed it on this album. And there's something to say about being able to run that many syllables together without crashing. You get some rappers who crash when they do this. And he raps in these hills, these controlled hills that run up, down, come back, and sometimes do loops. So it's almost like roller coaster style rap, but a very, very safe roller coaster. Malik B doesn't pack as many syllables, but does the same kind of slow build up, acceleration to these hollow rhyme compound sequences, and puts a lot of bite on the end of his bars. So flow masters, something to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats that takes us to dimension 5. The bar intent and wordplay. So you got all this flow. What are you saying in that? Now it's one thing to just rap a bunch of rhyming words together. Malik B and Black Thought carefully chose every word. When you make a choice to start your verse, look into the window, tell me what you see. The Illadelph School of Philosophy, right? And then your rhyming partner comes in the next verse it says, look into the window, tell me what you see. Lieutenant University of Philosophy. You already know that there's thought, there's preparation put into these bars, there's synergy. And then to go into, these sequences of being able to talk about everything from your rap style to, not being able to trust in this day and time, the reptilian rule the septillion tongue, your Armageddon won't come from the sun, or to be able to, in the same verse, talk about how you don't believe in that blonde hair, blue-eyed version of Jesus, but also say, these dudes kill me acting like stars, F they astrology. What? These rappers kill me acting like stars, F they astrology. There's just intent, right? On a song like It Just Don't Stop, Malik B is really taking you on an opinionated ride of how he views the world. So there's gonna be bragging, there's gonna be contemplation. So he'll say stuff, he'll actually say contemplation, right? I done been through the deserts of hell with Satan sitting, waiting, contemplating, and trying to get me for the taking. That's why I walk around with my brain on cock, cause it can't, won't, don't stop, right? And you get Black Thought, who will come in and just talk about something like, at times I feel as if I can pull a kamikaze, Illuminati rally in the Civic Center lobby. They cease in the world, student body probably creating missiles. They got my child holding pistols. There's intent in everything, even when they're using other people's rap. So on almost every verse of what they do, Black Thought uses a line from a classic rap song that came in the golden era, right? So my man came over and said, yo, we thought we heard you. That's a K Solo line from Knick Knack Paddywhack. Or I get paid when the record is played to put it short, I want it made like Ed. From I Got It Made, Special Ed. There's intent everywhere. The imagery that's used. I pulled a microphone on any pistol brandisher. That there encapsulates what I brought up earlier about Black Thought relying more on challenging you as a rapper than, as a street dude, even though he can go there. You get plenty of simile, and Malik B will use simile more than Black Thought in a simpler way. But Black Thought is going to say, he's going to compare himself to a dinosaur. You know what I mean? He's going to come from an unexpected realm and tie it all together. So really, just something to consider when we talk about the bar intent and the wordplay on this album. It's something to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. Takes us to dimension 6. Punchlines, poetic wisdom, overall quotability. So where I mentioned the punchlines on this album are not the emphasis. For some reason, they're just not what you wait for on this album, because there's this onslaught of lyricism coming from descriptive language, coming from imagery, coming from simile, coming from, alliteration and all these other devices, to the point where it doesn't even matter, because everything also just makes so much sense. There's not, again, rhyming words for the sake of rhyming words. I'm not saying energy, simile, heavenly, beverly, we're just not doing that. So you don't need a punchline because you're getting all those other things, but you get them here and there. And you get shock lines, you get shock value, mostly from the aggressive lines that come from Malik B and the other guests. Your punchlines are coming mostly from Common. Common is going to say, rappers get on the mic talking about cars and clothes, sounding like hoes. So yeah, you're gonna get them, but more than anything, the poetic wisdom that exists when the rappers are talking, when the guys are talking about the streets, is just beyond a lot of what was going on there. We were in the Wu-Tang era. There was a poetic but grounded quality of what they were doing when they were talking about life. They were talking about seeing beyond what was going on, not wanting to leave it. Not a lot of talk about leaving the hood, not a lot of talk about being better, just like trying to avoid the pitfalls that they had seen and how you could get sucked into it too. When Black Thought is rapping on Panic and he's talking about police level increase, but they're still climbing the streets, I can't breathe. Now what's going on? One minute you're alive, the next you're gone. Bust off into the heavens for the ones who fell. It's like, I'm not trying to be a millionaire and move out the hood. I'm thinking beyond the hood while still wanting to see how I can be a part of the solution in the hood. And just the things about life, when you listen to it, just don't stop. In those moments when Black Thought says, I terrorize the heavens, bring on a renaissance with the sevens that symbolize the reverence. Reppin' man, the deacon keeping them from speaking, tell him cease the false preaching. Like, you're getting a worldly view from people that are rooted, no pun intended, in their hood. And there's plenty of quotables on here because of how they describe the industry. Even on Push Up Your Lighter, Black Thought says, we were building on how we can organize the team for this capital gain, being that we in the rap game. It's time to get it all. He said he figured the same. We realized there's a planet of cream to obtain. They were on that level. So there was depth, there was intent, there was cleverness, and it all is something for you to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats when you're thinking about the punchlines and poetic wisdom and overall quotability. Dimension 7, concepts. There are loose concepts here. Push Up Your Lighter, very loose concept. They're talking about Philadelphia and just day-to-day life, and it's under the tie-in of pushing up your lighter, which is either you're a fan of mine, so push the lighter up, but mostly it's a get high reference, right? If you're smoking, smoke to this, zone out. Very loose concept. They tie it in together. Malik B, Bahamadia, and Black Thought all in their verses with the exquisite I exhibit the shine. Just a different angle on bragging or in repping your hood. Concerto to Desperado, same thing. Lots of that kind of imagery, like I'm on a stage somewhere in a concert and talking to my competitors. Loose. Hypnotic. Love song, but wrapped up in this story of someone dying that was a love interest who was too young and not mature yet, but would never get to realize, this later love because she passed away. Loose concept. What they do is just Black Thought contemplating out loud. The videos where you really see most of the conceptual execution, but Panic. The idea of Black Thought looking outside his window as a metaphor for just being able to be the observer and see the changes going on in his hood becoming more volatile, and Philadelphia as a whole becoming more of a violent landscape. Everything's loose here, no definitive concepts. There's no concept song, there's no abstraction here, nothing that goes into a character or a mode where you're supposed to think outside of what's being told on a linear way. So, something for you to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. Dimension 8 and Dimension 9. This is where we get into the content. So you get your external content, which is Dimension 8, and you get your internal content, which is Dimension 9. The rap industry, other rappers, and the state of things, how fake it is, how, oversaturated certain themes are, and then the violence and overall need for love in the city of brotherly love. Those are your external focal points. And we talked about how there's not a lot of splintering off into individualism on this album. So Black Thought and Malik B, when they are talking about their own outlooks and stuff, there's not a lot of divergence. They're on the same page for a lot of stuff, and you never go very much further than the two guys explaining where they fit in all of this, what they want for themselves, what they want for the group. On Hypnotic, Black Thought talks about his feelings about, how cool it was to be with this young lady and how it felt learning that he lost her. But you're not getting a lot of feelings or background into how they grew up, their childhood, their life activities, besides street stuff. When Ursula Rucker's outro, which is Adventures in Wonderland, where she talks about being a female hustler, ending up in prison within the rationalization of feeding her daughter, which is, common hustler speak. We hear hustlers all the time say they were doing this to feed their kids. Her talking about the ins and outs, her using the big descriptive poetic devices to illustrate how gritty and raw and dirty, that lifestyle could get, how seedy and scandalous. That is the bulk of your content right there in that one outro, and it's not even coming from the group itself. But Ursula Rucker was a staple on the first Roots albums before they just went into different territory. Kind of similar to how Common had his father speaking on the ends of all of his albums after Resurrection. That was a short-lived thing to look forward to. And Ursula Rucker gave heavy content. It's the equivalent of like a Toni Morrison or Alice Walker book, just in that spoken word piece at the end with the kalimba and the jail, prison bar sounds, and lots of food for thought there. The glimpses into their individual lives that you do get is just enough, because I don't think this album was an album that left a lot of space for wanting, I need to know more about who Black Thought is. It's like, no, this is their interest and arrival as a rap group and a force to be reckoned with in the game. Mission accomplished. Content, something to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats in both dimensions 8 and 9. Takes us to the final dimension, dimension 10, storytelling. You get storytelling on episodes, you get storytelling on Panic, you get storytelling on Hypnotic and Adventures in Wonderland, if you want to count that. These are strong songs. These are strong stories. They're visceral, they're raw, they are not happy stories. And so they leave you thinking by the end of the song, like, man, these are crazy, and then, there's story elements in the way certain verses are executed. So, No Great Pretender, Malik B goes into story territory of what he's doing or what he's planning on, plotting on doing. And then on, Push Up Your Lighter, again, the way Black Thought talked about riding the train and running into a friend and story. You get pulled into the world for a minute. But, Hypnotic, you kind of, feel some of those mixed feelings, like, man, what would have happened? Or, damn, how did she die? Episodes, you're like, are these real? Did this really happen? And that's a horrible way to go out, those things, the pitfalls of the streets. Panic, we mentioned how you feel taken into that world of alarm and like looking out the window as well. So, how good was the storytelling on this album is the question to be asked, and it's something for you to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. That concludes our Category 2 review of the classic from 1996 by The Roots, the album that really put them on the map. Illadelph Half-life, one of my favorite albums of all time, and I'm glad I got to review it and share with you all. Welcome me back. Again, keep watching, keep viewing. We are still building this global hip-hop community, and we will continue to do so. Like and subscribe to the channel. Until then, y'all know what it is. F a rap critic. Talk about it while I live it. Words of